Hi, I'm Amina Wasuma, and I'm here to talk about my novel, Amberstone Agent Zero, Episode 17, IEDs. Now, if anyone doesn't know what an IED is, it's an improvised explosive device where you can make them out of ball bearings, strap metal, cans, glasses, uh, plastics, pagers. You can make them and you put them together and they explode. Okay, you can make them as mines also. So Emani was sick and she was vomiting and she had stomach problems and her stomach would blow up and then it would go back down and she couldn't figure out what was the matter. Well, as the months went on, they kept setting these devices and troops were being killed left and right. Her stomach began to expand. So she didn't want Habid to know anything. She tried to keep it from Habid. She didn't want him to know that she was sick. She didn't want him to know that her stomach was growing. So she thought it was a tumor. So she confided in to Halima. And she said to her, listen, my stomach is getting big. And so I think it's a tumor. So Halima said, well, how do you know it's a tumor? She said, well, it kicks. So Halima said, well, that's not a tumor, that's a baby. And Imani's like, a baby? Yeah. So we can't tell father. So Imani says, well, I'm going to have to borrow some of your clothes to hide it because my clothes are getting too small. And she says, okay. She said, well, now, okay, we're going to have to tell Habid sooner or later. She said, no, we can't tell Habid. We can't tell Rasheed either. Because he is the only man that I've ever been with, and then we got to keep that secret. Also, so Halima said, well, what are we going to tell father? What happens when you get ready to have the baby? What are we going to do? She said, well, when I get ready, we will tell father we're going into the mountains to set some IEDs, and we disappear in a cave. And I'll have the baby. You'll help me. And once I have the baby, we'll come back and we'll give the baby away to someone in Iraq. And somebody will take it. We don't ever have to say it's ours. We can say we found it. So Halima said, are you sure? I said, well, that's the only way. I don't want Rasheed to have the baby. I don't want father to know. So this is what we tell Habib, that we were captured by some American soldiers and they held us and we finally escaped. So he'll never know, that I ever had a baby. So Lima said, well, that's a good idea. That's a good plan. Okay. I'll go along with it. So she gives Emani her clothes. Emani is wearing the clothes. Months go by, like a couple of months go by, and she's around like 8, 9 months pregnant. And they're out in the dust bowl of the desert. And so she's digging and Habid is digging and they're planting the IEDs. And it's a strong wind that comes by. And it blows her tunic across her stomach. So the tunic is like sticking to her stomach. You can see a well-formed pregnant belly. And Habid sees this. So he knows, right away what it is. And when the wind passes, he goes and he grabs Emani and says, "Who's the father?" And he touches her stomach. And he was like, "Who's the father?" She said, "I can't tell you." And he smacks her a couple of times. He smacks her so hard till her ear starts bleeding. "Tell me who the father is. You brought shame to the Azim family." And she said, "Rasheed is the father." He said, "Rasheed?" "Yeah." She said, "He raped me." She didn't want to say he raped Halima. So Habib said, "Okay, we're going to the palace and we're going to face Rasheed." And he tells Halima, "Don't talk to her, because he feels she should have came and told him a long time ago that Rasheed had raped her, and he could have confronted him months ago." So they get in the Jeep, and so Halima's trying to, take a handkerchief and wipe Imani's ear, because blood is coming out her ear, blood is coming out of her nose, from Habid slapping her. And Habid turns out, "Don't help her, don't help her, we're going to go and get this straight now." So they drive to the palace, and Rasheed is sitting there, and the clergymen are all in the palace. They're in the throne room. And Habib comes in with Halima and Emani. He walks in. So Rasheed is shocked. Like, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be out in the desert planting IEDs. And so Rasheed said, "Well, there's a matter that we need to discuss right now." He says, "My daughter, Emani, is pregnant with a child." And she says, "You're the father." And Rasheed says, "I'm the father. How can that be? Did the girl tell you this before?" He said, "No, she kept it secret." So Rasheed said, "Well, if I was the father, why didn't she come and tell you?" He said, "I'm not the father." And all the clergymen, ooh, He said, "I'm not the father. I don't know who the father of her child is. And for bringing this insult to me, I'm going to throw her in jail because she's pregnant without being married." And the clergyman said, "And she will be stoned or whipped, after she spends her time in jail." And Imani's like, "Father, don't let him do this to me. This is his child." And he looks at Rasheed and he looks at her. And Rasheed says, "She's lying. Why didn't she say something earlier? If I was the father, she would have came to me and said something to me or you. So she's lying." And Habib believes it. And so Rasheed orders the guard to take Emani to the prison. dungeons in the palace. And she's screaming and hollering, don't let him, put me in jail. Don't let him punish me, Father. And Habid is like, you brought shame to the Azim family. This is the punishment for that. And he looks away. And the guard comes and he grabs Emani and she's kicking and screaming. And he takes her out of the throne room, takes her down to the dungeon, pushes her in, and locks the door. And she's twirling around, not knowing what to do. And as she's in the dungeon, she's hearing a journalist. He's getting his mouth sewn shut, and he's getting his hands chopped. So she hears the whack, the whack, the whack. And then she hears him screaming and hollering. And she's just twirling around like, what is this? He spoke bad about Rasheed in the Western newspapers. And when he came to Iraq to do a story, they arrested him. And for speaking blasphemy against Rasheed, he's getting his fingers cut off. And he's getting his mouth sewn shut. So he screams and screams until she doesn't hear scream anymore. And she just doesn't know what to do. So Halima comes and said, oh my God, what are we going to do? And Emani's like, I don't know. So Halima said, I should have said he raped me too. So Emani said, well, if you would have said it, you're just a girl just like me, they would have thrown you in jail also. He would have said the two sisters are teaming up on him, and both of us are lying. So tune in for the next episode, episode 18, and see what happens. Does Emani get out of jail? Does she get whipped? Does she get stoned? Her fate is hanging in the winds. And it's up to Rasheed. Habid can't say anything or do anything, nor does he want to. He has totally sided with Rasheed. So, we'll see what happens.